Okay, guys. So this was an interesting story, and it comes on the heels of a recent development. I've had another removable lab refuse to make a Nesbit appliance. I don't know if anybody else has experienced that, but they say, "Oh, we won't make you a Nesbit because somebody could choke or swallow." And I think, okay, well, these soft flex partials, like they're pretty retentive. It would take a lot for it to just randomly lodge out. But either way, it's interesting that I had recently had this conversation with the dental lab because a woman just died from swallowing her dental plate. Now, in the story, they don't disclose the size of the plate or how much, how big it was. Was it a full plate? I can't imagine that was the case. I'm imagining it was a flipper of some sort or a single tooth partial, but she swallowed it. She swallowed it, went to the hospital thinking that she had swallowed it. They took initial set of x-rays, couldn't find anything. She went home about a week later, was starting to have a lot of issues medically, reported back to the hospital. They went through a bunch of battery of testing, and needless to say, in the attempt to try to retrieve it, find it, locate it, she ended up having a cardiac event and passed away. And obviously the family was awarded some compensation for this particular incident, but it brought to light the fact that under any x-ray system, the majority of partials, if they have no metal clasps, let's take a thermoplast or a flexible base partial, won't show up on a radiograph. So there are two sides to the coin for the judge. The first was back to the dental industry to say, is it time to consider some type of radiopaque marker so that if we do have these ingestible events, can we find it? And on the inverse side, it was back to the clinicians in the hospital to say you can't just rely on a single solitary imaging technology to think that it's going to bail you out or help you answer problems. You have to dig deeper. If the patient's reporting these issues or these symptoms, or in fact she reported believing she had swallowed it, you can't just take a chest x-ray and say, well, we don't see it, so it must not be there. Is it an ultrasound technology? Is it an endoscopy? Is it something else to be able to locate it? And so it was kind of a two-sided coin to say we both can do better. And so I took that to heart to say, maybe it is time to at least consider some type of radiopaque marker, either in the denture teeth themselves, which I think some have now, or in the thermoplast partials, that if there is an event that does occur, that we would actually be able to locate it and retrieve it, which would be half of the battle. So very interesting. A lot of state news that's happening. We've had a lot of activity over the last year or so, a lot going on the state level of what medical loss ratio should look like in different states. The compact for universal licensure has certainly been a topic, which we'll talk about a little bit tonight as well. But this summer, these states have been super active, a lot of activity on the local level, redefining how practitioners are being compensated, medical loss ratio, universal licensure, and the whole gamut of insurance reform. In Pennsylvania, we saw that the governor signed a bill that he could not mandate a credit card payment for services. So insurance companies cannot require you to accept a credit card. I think that's fantastic because we all know that transaction also costs somewhere between 2.5% and 3%. So there's another deduction for the insurance company to pass along to the practitioners. Missouri also amended its credit card legislation and assignment benefits to make it stronger for their practitioners. Illinois also passed virtual credit card and prior authorization laws. Florida, Arizona, New Jersey, and Iowa also passed virtual credit card legislation. So there's a ton of momentum in ensuring that practitioners are being paid fairly for the services being rendered and not ultimately penalized in percentage points if they're forced to take certain types of payment. Maryland looked at prior authorization laws. Tennessee also did virtual credit card legislation, bundling and downcoding. Indiana was on the docket for assignment of benefits and third-party network leasing bills. Wisconsin also passed an assignment of benefits law. Louisiana, Virginia, and Rhode Island also passed laws requiring insurers to report dental loss ratio, What does this say? It's all coming on the heels of question 2 from Massachusetts, a ton of uptick of states relooking at their dental health acts in their state, looking at licensure, payment, portability, and making sure that insurance companies are accountable. A ton of reform is happening. A lot of states have medical loss ratio on their ballots for the fall. We'll get updated information on that in the coming weeks. But it's really cool, frankly, to see that states are taking up arms basically to protect practitioners, to ensure that it's a healthy relationship between patients, practitioners, and their insurance companies. And on the tail of that, our final story for tonight, it was the last state in the union, by far one of the most conservative licensure states that we have. It used to be North Carolina. North Carolina was one of only a few states about 15 years ago that still had their own licensure exam, and they would not accept any other regional exam. That number has dwindled over time, but Florida had remained true to their state licensure. They had not added themselves to any of the regional licensures, nor did they accept it. They had pathways to licensure in their state for providers in other states, but you still had to go through a licensure process, and it wasn't through reciprocity alone. There were exams and parts of the examination process that had to be completed for you to be eligible for licensure in their state. Well, that changed this week when Governor DeSantis moved forward with legislation that would open up universal licensure for Florida. So, of all the states that I thought would sign the compact and be a part of the Portability Licensure Act, it was not Florida. I thought they might be one of the last ones to join, right along with North Carolina, but in fact, they have jumped on. I think part of it is the increase in population that they've seen over the last few years has left them very deficient in the areas of clinicians and other licensed professionals in their state. So this is a universal licensure, not just for dentistry, but it did impact their dental act, but in many other professional areas as well, to open the state up more for those individuals seeking to work and live in the state of Florida, but are professionally licensed in other states. We're going to break the law down. It's pretty complex. Actually, when they went back and reviewed it, it touches on many aspects of the Dental Act for Florida. A ton of things have been up for debate and negotiation in that particular bill. I'm quite amazed, actually, when I read it, how much they were able to get through in this particular legislative cycle. But it is an interesting update in what I thought would be the last stand for licensure in the United States. Florida has now jumped on board with universal licensure. I think that now will set the tone for many other states to follow suit before too long. I think we're going to see a lot of portability opening up in the next few years. And with that, that's the news.